Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we come together to learn more about Microsoft Graph Toolkit. My name is Hassan Mohsine. I'm the Program Manager for Microsoft Reactor in Abu Dhabi. Microsoft Reactors are a hub for founders and developers to meet, learn, and connect to local peers, as well as industry-leading ideas and technology from Microsoft, partners, and the open source community. It's also home to the Microsoft for Startups program, with a diverse mix of hands-on workshops, expert panels, and community events. There is something for everyone. Check out our calendar of events on meetup.com and join our coming sessions. Our speaker today is Ayca Bash. Ayca works at Microsoft as a cloud advocate, focusing on Microsoft Graph, Microsoft Teams, M365, and Azure. She extensively concentrated on Azure App Services, both cognitive services and IoT over the years, and she works on site with more than 100 customers around EMEA. She shares what she learned on Twitter, so you can follow her. I'll link her Twitter account for you in the Q&A as an announcement, and also on her blog, quickbytes.dev. Feel free to ask questions during the session. We will have regular stops to answer these questions, and also feel free to tweet about the session and tag us on Reactor Abu Dhabi and MSFT Reactor. Make sure also you adjust the playback settings to select the highest quality for the best experience in today's session. And with all that said, I hand over the mic to our speaker to start today's session.
Thanks, Susam. Let me share my screen first. Let me know when you can see it.
Yes, it's all good. Sending it live.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Meanwhile, I can do the quick introduction. Actually, Hussam did already. My name is Ayca Bash, and I work at Microsoft as Cloud Advocate. I'm extensively focusing on Microsoft Graph, Teams, and Azure development. Today, we're going to go deep dive into Microsoft Graph Toolkit, and we will discover what we can do with Microsoft Graph Toolkit in React.NET, Angular applications, and we will also have quick live demos. We will use Microsoft Graph Toolkit in a React application. And if you have any questions at the end, I'll try to keep some time for us to make Q&A, and we can take the discussions further on Twitter. I'm active on Twitter. If you have any other questions, you can DM me or directly tweet. Okay, let's start. I'm going to start with the real question. What is Microsoft Graph Toolkit? Microsoft Graph Toolkit is a collection of reusable framework agnostic web components powered by Microsoft Graph. Basically, these components are helping us to consume Microsoft Graph directly from the UI. So components work automatically with Microsoft Graph. We don't need any customization further. Well, once we add the HTML component in the HTML documentation, we are expecting to get the entire authentication flow in the background, or calendar, or tasks directly embedded in our application. And also, we don't need to change or learn new framework. If you're an Angular developer, or if you know React or .NET Core, then you can go ahead and use the same framework. These components work in all modern web frameworks and all modern web browsers. So you can continue using the same framework, and you can publish your application for any modern browser. Who is it for? It's basically for any developers, but mainly we're focusing on web applications, Teams, tabs, and SharePoint web parts. In that case, I assume that web developers, also Teams developers or SharePoint developers, will be much more interested if they are looking for consuming Microsoft Graph on their applications. And this actually Microsoft Graph Toolkit is a quick way of consuming Graph. So in this case, these developers will be much more interested on this area. And what is the reason, why instead of consuming Microsoft Graph, why we should go ahead and use Microsoft Graph Toolkit? First of all, it cuts development time. It saves lots of time for us as developers because, as I said, once we embed one line of code in HTML, I'm expecting to gather entire calendar or tasks, as well as entire MSAL authentication in the background. So as you know, authentication was always the big part for us in the applications. With Microsoft Graph Toolkit, now we have one provider for MSAL with 2 or 3 lines of code. We can directly get entire authentication flow in the background. The second thing is it's flexible, so you don't need to adapt it into a new framework. You don't need to learn the new SDK or so on. We will continue using the same web framework you prefer. It can be Vue, it can be Angular, or if you're a .NET developer, you can go ahead and use the components in your own .NET applications. It's quite flexible, so it's also very customizable. If you don't have any components, let's say that you want to use a to-do handle in the graph application, but it's not available in the component, then you can create a custom one for yourself. It's quite flexible. I'm just going to demonstrate you in the future. And the last thing is it's open source, so anyone can enhance the existing components too. The entire Graph Toolkit product team is working open source. You can find their work on GitHub. I'm going to share the link at the end. So if you're new to Graph Toolkit and if you are a person who learns from hands-on, just like me, I highly recommend you to check out the documentation, the Get Started documentation, and try some basic stuff with the toolkit, like, for example, creating a vanilla HTML file, and then try consuming the components in the HTML file. This is going to give you more understanding how you can consume Graph Toolkit. And actually, this is exactly what I'm going to do right now. Instead of going through the slides, I think it's better to keep our hands dirty and start consuming the toolkit. First, we are going to have a basic demo with HTML file. We will try to consume 1 or 2 components in the HTML and try to understand how it works in the background. As well as we will need Azure Active Directory registration for that to consume MSAL authentication flow. So I'm going to open a new browser. Sorry, I'm not going to open it. Okay, what I'm going to do first is I just want to show you the official documentation of the toolkit. Let me zoom in a little so that you can see easily. I will go to aka.ms/g-toolkit. It was in my first slide. This is the quick link for our toolkit documentation. If you're interested in quick 2-3 line copy paste and understand how Graph Toolkit works, I think this is the best place to start. You can go to Get Started and literally just copy paste these lines and test Graph Toolkit in your application. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing here. I will go ahead and create an HTML file in my Visual Studio Code. Quickly, let me open Visual Studio Code, and I will create a new folder from scratch, and I will just create one HTML file. Open folder. Let me create a new folder. MGT HTML. Then next thing I will do is I will create index HTML in my folder. Then, since I don't remember the exact HTML view, I'm just going to go ahead and select HTML sample here. This will generate the basic HTML view for me. I just click Control Space, and this gives me the entire HTML file. And now what I'm going to do is I will, in the body part, I will add my MGT loader. And the second thing is I'm going to use MSAL provider for Microsoft Authentication Library. So in the background, I will be able to create the entire authentication flow. And the third thing is I'm going to use a login button, a login component. With login component, I will be able to use authentication flow. Plus, it will bring me a UI component where I can see the login button on the screen. So let's start with adding script. And it's quite slow today. Interesting. Okay. IntelliSense is not working. What I will do is I'm going to add source, and my source is going to be HTTPS. By the way, you don't need to remember this by heart. You can just go ahead and copy paste from the get started link. Everything is available there. And actually, it is safer to copy paste because I always write it wrong. unpkg.com at Microsoft MGT test bundle MGT loader.js. So this will bring me the components, and I'll be able to consume all of the MGT components and providers. Next, I will add MSAL provider. So MGT MSAL provider. This provider will consume client ID. And this client ID will come from my Azure Active Directory app. So to be able to consume MSAL provider, first I need to register my application in Azure Active Directory. We will do that in a second, but before, let's go ahead and add our MGT login component, and then we can test this in live server. At least we can see the button. If it is working, we can go ahead and create our application in Azure Active Directory. Now, I am using a live server extension in Visual Studio Code. I click Go Live, and it's using localhost 3000. Let me open in the private window so it will be easy for us. Localhost 3000. There we go. We have our button, but it is not clickable because we don't have our application registered in Azure Active Directory. The second step I will do, I will go ahead and register my application in Azure Active Directory. I'll go to portal.azure.com. Then I will log in with my demo tenant. You can create your demo tenant from M365 program. It's actually free, so it's easy to test stuff. Oops, let me use another demo tenant. Okay, next, I will go to Azure Active Directory. Then I will go to app registrations and create new registration. Here, I'm just going to give it a name, MGT HTML demo, anything. In this part, we have some options. We can give different access to this API. The first one, give access to accounts in your organization. So only Contoso accounts can reach out to this API. The second one gives accounts in any organizational directory. So any company, organization, or school can reach out to this app. And the third one gives access to accounts in organizational directory as well as the personal Microsoft account. So you can use your own personal account or you can use your company work school account. And the fourth one is personal Microsoft accounts only. This is a new one. We can just give access to personal Microsoft account. So we cannot access through the organizational directory, but we can only use personal. I'm just going to go ahead and give access to everything. And redirect your URI is going to be my app, localhost 3000, and register. When I create this application, the only thing I need to do is copying the client ID. Before I copy and paste this in my HTML file, I'm just going to go to authentication and enable implicit grant so that I can access tokens and ID tokens. Save it. Then I will copy paste my client ID in the HTML. So turn back to my HTML, paste my client ID. So now I saved it. I will turn back to my page. I'm expecting my button to have authentication flow in the background. And yes, it directed me to login page. Now I'm going to log in. It should ask me to grant some permissions because when I log in, it's going to grab a UI which shows my profile, basically my image and my name and email address. So it's asking exactly the same thing. Sign you in and read your profile. I consent on behalf of my organization. When I accept it, then here we go. Sorry, this is my admin, but this is the name of this email address. This is my page. This is my image, and this is my email address. Basically, with 3 lines of code, I just added this. I can get my authentication in the background. I can log in, and then it will bring the basic UI with the picture and email address and the name. So this is a very easy way of create authentication in your application if that's what you're looking for. It also includes UI as well, and I think it's quite simple. And since we added this in the HTML, you will see in upcoming demos, I'm just going to use exactly the same thing in React application. So you can use this component in any application you want. So let's continue with the presentation. Just gonna close these and turn back to my presentation. Okay, what are the components? Now you're aware of the login component. We have some other components too. For example, we have agenda, just like MGT login. We can add MGT agenda, tasks, people, person, people picker, person card, teams, channel picker, and get. These components will work fluently without adding any other customization. We don't need anything else. These components are calling graph in the background. With 1 line of HTML, we can directly get entire agenda or all people in my account or any channel on Teams and so on. If you're new to Microsoft Graph Toolkit, as I mentioned, Get Started documentation is the best for learning. And if you're a hands-on learner like me, I highly recommend you to go ahead and check out MGT Dev. MGT Dev is a tool, we call it as a playground, where you can simply copy-paste HTML, change the JavaScript part, add some CSS, and see what's going on in the background. As well as there are documentation related. There's a really nice documentation related with each and every component, and there are some other samples too. So this is a great place to work around before you start working in your own project. You can basically create your own component and see it visually, visually if it looks good, and if you want to copy and paste it in your application, you can just directly grab it from the MGT dev and start consuming directly from your own application. Let's check out together MGT dev. I'm gonna again open my browser and go to mgt.dev. Maybe I should zoom in so that you can see easily. Yes, so we are in the playground. If you go to mgt.dev, it will direct you to Microsoft Graph Toolkit Playground. This playground is really nice one because on the right side, you can add some HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and you can literally see the changes here. So, for example, I can see what I can add in the MGT agenda. If you click here, get by date, so you can see there are some attributes we can use for the calendar. And if you don't want to check out this, but try doing something by yourself, you can literally come here and write group by day, and automatically you will see the changes on the left side. It will group everything by day. You can add some other attributes too. And this is available for all components, anything. Here we have people, for example. If you want to check out different stuff, you can check groups, people per group ID, people queries, person, photo only. So these are the scenarios, different scenarios for the components we have available. And if you want to check what we have available for each and every component, on the right side of Canvas, you can see docs. Under MGT agenda, if you scroll down, you can find out all the attributes we can use for agenda, all properties we can consume, events, and these are the stories. So stories are available here. These are just selected scenarios for you. But if you want to add some more attributes and create your own way of agenda, then you can just consume the attributes and properties events however you like, and you can create your own directly in the playground. And last but not least, there are great samples here. If you want to consume them too, log in to show agenda. This shows how we consume, login, and so on. So if you like just checking around, exploring, playing a little bit with the toolkit, I think this is the best place to learn about the toolkit. Okay, let's continue. Let's take a deep look about the attributes, properties, and CSS. Basically, all components are capable to get attributes. You can see the list of attributes and properties in the MGT dev, as well as in the official documentation. If you go to g-tool.aks.ms/g-toolkit, you can also find out the same attributes and properties per components. And if you want to change the look of the components, you can change CSS. It is just working like other CSS files. Basically, if you want to change this font size, height, or background color, it is just like any other CSS file you can play around. Another important thing about the toolkit, we like using templating because if you want to reuse the same login on different parts of your web application, let's say I use login in the first page, but I want to use login on the right side of the page as well on the top, also somewhere else. The same thing for calendar. If you want to implement same calendar with the same look in different pages in your application, then you can use templating and you can reuse the same template again and again in your web application. We also have data context helper available. If you want to show some data in your application, you can use index and parent. This just works like any other HTML. We also have conditional rendering. You can use conditional rendering in your HTML file. In this example, for example, if a person has the image, then show the image on the screen. Otherwise, just show initials of the person. So you can, instead of writing this again and again for many people, you can easily use data if and data else. Looping is again the same thing. If you have hundreds of people you need to show in the screen, instead of writing 100 lines of list, we can use data for, so we can just show 100 events on the screen with 2-3 lines of HTML code. MGT get, this is my favorite part, let's say. MGT get is another component we use a lot. This basically gives you a lot of flexibility. As you know, we have multiple different components. We have login, agenda, tasks, and people, person, and so on. But let's say that you want to consume something else in Microsoft Graph, but this is not available as a component. Then what you can do, you can go ahead and consume MGT get. You can define a graph handle in the resources. Let's say in this example, we can directly get entire emails from the Outlook from mailbox if we use me/messages. You can define graph version as beta or version 1.0. Then you need to define scopes. In this case, it's mail read. Then you can use the template inside of MGT get. This gives us a lot of flexibility because whatever is available in Microsoft Graph can be consumed as Microsoft Graph Toolkit thanks to MGT get. So in this case, if we consider we have more than 5,000 different Microsoft Graph handle, and we can use all of them as the Graph component, Graph Toolkit component by using MGT get. I consume this a lot in different kind of scenarios, like, for example, trending handle or to-do handle or many more. And it is quite easy when we implement this in the HTML file and start consuming directly from the HTML. Let's talk about the providers a little bit. In this example, we covered in the HTML file, we consume MSOL, Microsoft Authentication Library. This consumes Microsoft Azure Active Directory Authentication, and that's why we created application in Azure Active Directory and use the client ID in the background. But we have some other providers as well. For example, we have Teams provider. If you want to use components in a Teams tab, then you can go ahead and use Teams provider. We also have SharePoint, proxy, and custom providers. In the SharePoint provider, if you are interested in creating web parts in SharePoint, then you can use SharePoint providers. And let's say that in the proxy provider, if you have your own authentication flow in the background and you don't want to change that authentication, but still you still want to consume Microsoft Graph Toolkit components because they're super easy to implement, let's say calendar or tasks or people, then what you can do is you can consume proxy provider. With proxy provider, we can get the client ID and token, access token from your authentication flow, and we can still consume the components by grabbing the access token from your authentication flow thanks to proxy provider. And the last part is if you're interested in building your own provider, we have custom providers for that. Okay, so In my last demo, I want to create a React application from scratch. Then I'm going to consume Microsoft Graph Toolkit in the React application. In this case, this is just going to be in one area, but just let us know if you're interested in doing the same thing in .NET core application, as well as if you want to see how to consume proxy provider in .NET core application and so on. We can also do that in a separate session. Okay, let's jump into the demo. I'm going to open my terminal. Okay, I hope you can see it. I will go to desktop. Then I'm going to create an empty folder, React demo. I will go in my React demo folder. Then I will create a React application from scratch. npx create dash react dash app my oh. Hussam, can you still hear me?
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay. The screen was frozen for a minute. That's why I wanted to check. Okay, now I'm creating my React application. It's a straightforward React JavaScript application, and then we will consume our components in our app. I will close our browsers. Meanwhile, actually, I can show you how you can change and consume mgt-get component. Again, I'm going to go to mgt-dev, mgt.dev. I will zoom in a little. Okay. Let me close this. Okay, so in mgt-get, in get email part, as you can see here, if you change this handle, instead of using me messages here, this brings all emails from my Outlook. But if you want to get some other data from anywhere else, you can just change the resource handle from here. You can use whichever graph version you want, and then you can change scopes.
Just a quick one here. The screen has frozen on the terminal. So can we maybe restart the screen share?
Sure. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, can you see the playground now?
Yes, that's all good now. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So what I was telling is that you can change the resource handle from here. Now this me/messages is getting Outlook data. This basically calls graph.microsoft.com/me/messages with version beta. So we can create our own component by using mgt-get, and we can consume any Microsoft Graph we want, so we can get any data we require. And if you're new to Microsoft Graph in general, I highly recommend you to go to aka.ms/dg-explorer. Here, this is another tool, and this is also a free tool where we can play around with Microsoft Graph and see the responses and all of the graph handles we can use. You can simply do the sign-in and authentication from here, and you can consume the samples. For example, mgt-get me/messages is using exactly this handle, and this is giving me all the response we require from the Outlook. So I'm assuming our app should be okay for now. Oh, still, okay. We are so close. We will be there soon. This is just a React application. Okay, so to be able to create applications like that, it is not only HTML example. We can again go to aka.ms/g-toolkit. Let me zoom in a bit so you can see easily. So in this demo, I'm just going to write everything from scratch. But if you're looking for easy samples related with providers and some languages you prefer, web frameworks you prefer, then this is an example for SharePoint. We also have examples for React. You can basically get a React example and try to consume it in your applications. And this is the TypeScript with React. We have Angular, and all these available in Microsoft Graph Toolkit GitHub repository too, if you are searching for samples. This takes longer than I expected. And I think we have more time for GitHub repository too. Let's go to GitHub. So this is my colleague's repository, and if you search for Microsoft Graph Toolkit, you will find out Microsoft Graph Toolkit here, and you can see some samples, and you can directly download and try using these samples too. Okay, so finally our demo is ready. So I'm going to open this in code, Visual Studio's code. Okay, this didn't work, so I will open folder. React demo. So this is my app. Before I do anything, I just want to run my app to show you this rolling React application sign. I will go in my app, cd my app, and then I will go ahead and npm start. Starting the development server. Maybe I should close these. Everything is super slow now. Okay, it opened up here. Loading. Yeah, so here we go, our React application. So let's add our login button, and then we can try to use our agenda and tasks components and see how this acts in React application. First, I'm just gonna stop this one. Then I will add my component MGT. I'm gonna install MGT. I will say npm. Maybe I should scroll. Install at Microsoft MGT. Then I should be able to use my components in React application. In this example, we will use MSAL provider, but let us know if you're interested seeing other providers, other web frameworks, then we can also work around the session for that. So while this is running, we will go ahead, not public, our source, then we will go to our app.js and we will update our app. I'm literally going to delete everything here, but since everything is so slow. Okay, this should be done in a couple of minutes. I'm just gonna delete my div. So let me just delete the header and add my component, and then I will also import MGT login component so that I will be able to see my login component in the screen. I just delete this mgt login, and I need to, of course, import my, you can either import entire mgt or you can import login component. I'm just going to import login component just to show you how it looks like. mgt test AS6 components mgt. As you can see, we can import one by one, or you can get directly entire library. For now, let's try mgt login. mgt login JS. Okay, I save this and I include my login. What's missing for now is my provider. I'll go to index.js and I'm going to import my provider. Import providers, then msal, whichever provider you prefer. For us now, it's msal provider. Then from where Microsoft mgt get. And the last part is calling my provider. Providers, global provider, then new msal provider, and again I need my client ID. So when I have my client ID, I'm expecting, let me save this, I'm expecting my login component to have authentication flow in the background, and as well as it should work fine in the msal. After we try this login, if button is working, then we can try creating new application in Azure Active Directory, and after that we can try to add other components. npm start again. I'm gonna close this one and waiting for a new one to open up. As you all know, it doesn't take this much time usually, but now it takes. Okay, localhost 3000. Loading, and it is just loading. Oh, login. Client ID must be provided. Okay, then let's provide our client ID. Let's go to portal.azure.com and create our application, portal.azure.com. Azure Active Directory. Then app registrations. You know this part already by now. New registration, and I'm gonna say mgt react app demo AD. And I will choose the same one, accounts in any organization directory and personal Microsoft accounts. Then I'm going to add, again, our application HTTPS or HTTP. Let me, HTTP, okay. HTTP, localhost, register. Once we enable implicit grant, then you're good to go. I will go to authentication, enable implicit grant like access tokens, ID tokens. I save it. By the way, you can use exactly the same application we created for HTML. I just wanted to repeat it for this particular demo. I will go to overview and copy our client ID, paste it here, and compiling. I need to open again. Okay, now we have the button and we can click it. Then the same process. I need to consent for my user profile. Then this is gonna appear here. So next, I will just go to app.js and add more components like MGT agenda. I save it, then this will compile again. Let me open a private window. So this should ask again access to my permission to access my calendar, and whichever component I add, again, this is going to ask me permission. I will zoom a bit more. Sign in. Admin. You can use, since we set this as any organizational account and personal, you can actually access this through personal account too. This is going to ask my calendar and basic profile because I just added calendar too. And now this should ask me people list, because if we have other people in the calendar event, we can see their profile too from the component like this. And another one for basic profile. So we can hover over and see their email addresses from here. So apparently I send all these invitations to this account, but now you can see that we can have the calendar view. Let's try one last and then we can close our session. I'm going to add tasks. Actually, I know that you're not going to use this like this. You will add much more beautiful CSS files and so on, so it will look prettier. But for now, just the sake of this demo, we can have our calendar and we can have our tasks. But once you have good looking CSS or some JavaScript, you can actually make this look much more beautiful. So when I click the person, it is just asking another permission, read your contacts. To prevent this accept, you can actually add scopes in your own application too. So in the curly bracket, you can define these are the scopes. So it is just going to ask everything at once, and this will work fluently. So yeah, we can see add new people and so on. Yes, so this was our simple demo. Just let me stop this. Before I close out, I just want to share quick links with you. I assume this will be useful. You know the playground already, we checked out together. We have great blog series where you can find different examples and also see how to consume other providers too. You can go to ayca.ms/mgtlab. To reach out official documentation, you can go to ayca.ms/g-toolkit. If you are interested in official GitHub repository for Microsoft Graph Toolkit, it's available under ayca.ms/mgt, and you can always ask your questions in the Stack Overflow. Our Graph Toolkit team is quite active in the Stack Overflow. With that, we share last slides too. If you want to fill out the survey, this is the link for the survey for Reactor Abu Dhabi, and the session event code is 8115. Thanks, everyone. I want to quickly check out the Q&A. I know that I'm out of time, so unfortunately this should be quick. But if you are, if I cannot answer all of those questions, feel free to reach out to me from Twitter so we can discuss your questions further. And if you're interested in any more sessions related with Graph Toolkit, just let us know so we can focus on other areas like .NET, proxy provider, and so on. Let's check. Okay, so this is nice to see that Kevin is interested to see how this works in .NET Core. I'm happy to have another session related with .NET Core with .NET Core example. What is the status of beta version? Will it move to preview soon? I don't have the official information about it. You can check the GitHub repository for Microsoft Graph and follow the announcements. But for this question, I don't have the official answer, unfortunately. Okay. So I think we don't have any other questions. With that, we can close out the session. Thanks everyone for joining today's Microsoft Graph Toolkit session. I'm glad to cover everything I planned. I hope to see you in next session. Thanks.
Thanks, Ayca. I just want to take a couple of minutes to share a few things also, in addition to the survey with the community, a few upcoming sessions. So I'm going to start sharing my screen now. All right, so tomorrow, on Monday, as usual, we have these workshops, and tomorrow's topic will be on JavaScript. So if you want to start programming for the web, one of the languages that you will need to have in your tool belt is JavaScript. JavaScript is essential. You can make your pages dynamic and interactive using this language. And in this workshop, you will see how you can get started with JavaScript and work through the core syntax and functionality and gain experience with libraries and frameworks that can help you make life easy as a developer. So join us tomorrow, and also next week there will be another interesting workshop that will be on TypeScript fundamentals. So TypeScript is an open source object-oriented language, and it's becoming a cross-platform tool for developing modern web applications. So in this session, it's recommended to have the basic knowledge of JavaScript. So make sure you attend tomorrow's session to continue learning and continue the journey, and continue joining us on Mondays with these workshops at 4 p.m. local time. We have a session with Rory Preddy, also a cloud advocate at Microsoft, on Kubernetes by example on Wednesday, September the 2nd. So questions like, how do I manage an application at a scale? It's very common in today's developer world. And with modern web services, users are expected to see the applications and available 24/7. So as developers, you are expected to deploy new versions, and these applications have different updates throughout the day, and with that, you will need a good understanding of containerization. This helps you manage the package software to serve these goals, enable the applications to be released, updated in a very easy and fast way without any downtime. So join us on this session on Wednesday, September the 2nd to learn more with Rory how you can use this technology and how you can use also Azure Kubernetes service to make sure that these applications run where and where you want them. There are also more learning opportunities on our meetup, so make sure you check that calendar out. And also you can continue the journey and subscribe to our monthly newsletter. We create this content around all the interesting sessions and workshops that we're doing, and you can also join the newsletter for the other reactors or the global events that we're doing. So it gives you a good overview of all the interesting happenings that are coming from the Reactor Abu Dhabi and from the global Reactor team that are across all over the world. And also you can subscribe to Azure Dev Community and Microsoft Cloud Society for more learning opportunities. And also you can stay in touch as Reactor sessions are covering a broad range of technologies, whether you're just getting started or working on a complex project. All our sessions are free and available to all. So make sure you share these sessions. And we're very, very close to reaching 2,000 members on Meetup. So I highly encourage you to share everything we're doing and all the sessions that are interesting to you with your friends and community. Stay safe and I hope to see you in the coming sessions.